Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to your Monday edition of the Post Up with David Grubb. I, of course, am your host, David Grubb, right here on Boot Crew Media. New week, new episode. So thank you for continuing to support the show. I really appreciate you. And today we're going to focus on some trade and draft rumors. But first, a bit of breaking news. According to Shams Charania, Pelicans general manager Bryson Graham is headed east to join the Atlanta Hawks front office. Graham will be the team's senior vice president of basketball operations. Of course, he's been with the Pelicans since 2010 and was named general manager in June of last year. Pelicans front office, as you know, has undergone a major reorganization since the arrival of Joe Dumars, and Graham's skill set was likely rendered redundant, as well as his position once Troy Weaver came over from the Washington Wizards. So the power shift continues in the Pelicans front office. It feels like this is a kind of a big loss, though, because Bryson Graham was a homegrown guy. You know, had been with the Pelicans for a decade and a half, had gone up the ranks, learned the system, and was considered the center of the Pelicans' young player acquisitions for the last couple of seasons. A guy who did a great job in scouting talent, but certainly Troy Weaver comes in with the understanding that that's his skill set as well. And so I would imagine that Joe Dumars just feels more comfortable with these folks that he's assembled, almost all of them with Detroit or Michigan connections in some way, either connected to the Pistons or the state of Michigan in some way. So it just looks like Joe Dumars wants his people in their positions, and that's his right to do so. But I do think that this is going to be a loss for the New Orleans Pelicans in losing a talent like Bryson Graham. Of course, it's fortunate that he's not moving to a rival, but still, you know, you've seen Trajan Langdon, who went on and in his first year in Detroit did a fantastic job with the Pistons, making them a playoff team on the backs of what Troy Weaver failed to do while he was the general manager. Some of it Weaver was not in control of, but he was the general manager of record while the team stumbled all the way down to 17 wins. But Trajan Langdon, who was highly thought of before with the Pelicans, and before he got to the Pelicans when he was working with the Nets, Trajan Langdon turned it around in one season, and the Pistons are now one of the up-and-coming teams in the NBA. Then you look at Bryson Graham, and we talked about his abilities and his skill set. He's going to take that to a Hawks team that is still trying to build around Trae Young, that has some interesting young talented pieces, that made the trade to send DeAndre Hunter to the Cavs last year. Is trying to get their breakthrough, because the Hawks, since making the conference finals a couple years ago, that year when they beat the Knicks in Madison Square Garden, they were going through the Eastern Conference pretty quickly. Some of that was matchup based, but still, they've not come close to that since then. So we'll see what Bryson Graham does, but let's go ahead and move on to the on-court news. Talked about the Hawks trade with the Cavs. Well, according to NBA Brian Windhorst, the Cleveland Cavaliers are now openly taking offers for Darius Garland, their guard, and the New Orleans Pelicans are reportedly interested in acquiring him. We all know that one of the Pelicans' biggest areas of need has been the point guard position, and it's been that way since Rajon Rondo left after the 2017-2018 season. Garland was named an All-Star in 2022 and 2024. He spent the last 6 seasons with the Cavs and has been one of the most consistent backcourt performers in the NBA. Over the last 4 seasons, he's averaged 21 points, 7 assists, and just over 1 steal per game, while shooting 46% from the floor and 39% from deep. Those are great numbers for a guard. He's coming off a career best 75 games played last season, put up the best shooting numbers of his career, just almost across the board, while playing a career low in minutes. Just played under 31 minutes a game as the Cavs led the Eastern Conference in wins and were second in the NBA in wins. With CJ McCollum on the trade block, DeJounte Murray out for an extended period, recovering from that right torn Achilles, Garland could be the Pelicans' long-term solution at the point guard spot. He is going into the 3rd year of his 5-year, $197 million rookie scale extension. So you have him under contract for multiple years if you make that deal. He is coming off of toe surgery. He had toe surgery today, which will keep him out of action for the next 4 to 5 months. So he likely won't be ready to start the upcoming season. But if the Pelicans make this deal, if you go in for Darius Garland, it's going to likely cost them multiple first-round picks and Herb Jones, among others. I cannot imagine a scenario where the Pelicans decide to send Trey Murphy to Cleveland in this deal because you're giving up assets to get smaller when the Pelicans are small enough. I think that if you could, it'd have to be multiple players, but if you have a package that's centered around Herb Jones, Kelly Olynyk and his expiring contract, Jordan Hawkins, and whatever picks you're going to throw into that, I think you can make that deal. Because the Cavs, a team that is flirting with the second apron, that needs to get off some of this salary, they can't keep everybody. It also has an impact on Jared Allen's future with the Cavs because of that salary problem. So either Garland or Jared Allen seem like the number 1 and number 2 candidates to be moved by the Cavs, and both of those have drawn interest from the New Orleans Pelicans. I think that financially, due to his age, because Jared Allen is 30 now, due to his age, Darius Garland's upside, considering he's played 6 seasons in the league, he's 24 years old, 25, and you got him under contract for 3 more years. At 28, he could still be entering his prime. Whereas Jared Allen, would be, as you go down the road, he has a very expensive contract himself, and he'd be in his mid-30s, early 30s, when his deal expires. But an expensive center position player who, for this team, I don't know if he increases your tempo. He certainly could help you defensively with Jared Allen, but you need to increase the tempo. That's the one thing we know that the Pelicans have to do offensively is get faster to get up and down the court. And Darius Garland is that kind of player. He can push the tempo, and his shooting makes him even more valuable. To be a guy who can knock down 39 to 40% of your threes on a regular basis and be a efficient scorer inside the arc, which he is, and he's a great free throw shooter, and he takes care of the basketball fairly well, averaging over 7 assists, as we talked about, for the last 4 seasons. So he can pass the basketball, he can score the basketball, he's going to increase tempo, and if you can't unload the DeJounte Murray contract, you have an interesting backcourt, moving DeJounte off the ball and giving Garland the point guard spot. You move DeJounte to the 2, depending on what you do in this draft, obviously. But if you can't move off DeJounte's contract, you got to play him. So you play him at the 2 like he was in Atlanta, but with a less ball-dominant guard in Garland, and maybe a more efficient, as far as not putting up the volume of shots, but maybe a more efficient scorer than Trae Young in that regard. So that could certainly help DeJounte with that. And then you've got 2 guys who can run on the perimeter, and you're taking DeJounte's role defensively, and you're allowing him to not be the primary defender on the ball. You give that job to Garland, who's coming off a season where the Cavs had one of the better defenses in the league. He's not the greatest on-ball defender. He's not the biggest guard, but he can give you a lot at that position. And I think the Pelicans have to be looking into this if there's any possibility that he can play for them in the future. One of the other rumors that's going on right now with the Pelicans is that the Pels are discussing a possible trade with the Philadelphia 76ers that would obtain the 3rd pick in this year's draft, with New Orleans then taking Rutgers wing Ace Bailey. Yahoo Sports insider Kevin O'Connor reported that Joe Dumars really likes Bailey and is considering the move to draft him. I think that's a mistake. Ace Bailey's value is falling. He was at one point the no doubt 3rd pick in this draft. At one point, he was no doubt. There was, before the college basketball season, he was in contention for the number 1 pick. But we're talking about a guy now, as far as the New Orleans Pelicans are concerned. And I know that there are people who are really high on Ace Bailey, but I'm not. And I'll say this why. Number 1, he was supposed to be 6'10", and he's 6'7". So he can't play the 4. He's not that kind of rebounder. He's not that kind of defender. So he can't play the 4. He has to play the 3. You're playing Zion Williamson more at the 3. You play Trey Murphy at the 3. So Ace Bailey, then, where are your minutes coming from? You need to move him to the 2. But he can't handle the basketball. He's a creative shot maker, but he's not a catch and shoot player. So if you're kicking it out to him, he may knock down some of those shots, but he's one of those guys who wants to work for his own shot. He's not a great passer. He's not a great defender. He's not a great rebounder. His one asset is that his ability to knock down shots. And with the Pelicans offense, if you take on an Ace Bailey, no matter what, you need the kind of players who can create for him, to give him easy opportunities to score. And if he's going to be somebody who's playing off of the Zion Williamson penetration and he's not necessarily a knockdown shooter, I don't know if you're getting the same value for Ace Bailey, because he's not a guy who does great in transition. He's not a guy who has creativity with the basketball in his hands. He doesn't have back to the basket moves. He's a scorer. And to do that, you've got to put the ball in his hands. And the Pelicans, in the hierarchy of who they have on the court, Ace Bailey does not fit in the top two. And he's a guy who's going to need top two type usage to really find his game. He needs to go to a team that's going to give him the 12 to 15 shots that he wants per night. And he's not going to get that with the New Orleans Pelicans. I think that would be frustrating for him. I think it'd be frustrating for fans, and I don't think he would fit. Because this team does have to get faster. It does have to get better shooting. But Ace Bailey, I don't think at 3, if the Pelicans have to give up assets to move up to 3, I don't think that they're getting a better player at 3 than they would get at 7. Like, I think the players from 3 to 11 are all the same as far as what their value is. From 3 to 11, it's about the same. So if you're in that, why move up to pay someone more who's no greater player than what you could get at 7? Any of the players that are available at 7 should be able to impact the Pelicans, unless something, a major curveball gets thrown on the night of the draft, whether it be by trade or by pick. But any of those players that's available at 7 should be able to give the Pelicans value. I would like to see the Pelicans get back into the first round late. If they can pick up a pick late in the first round or very early in the second round, I would love to see that. But I don't think the value is there to move up to get Ace Bailey unless you think he's a franchise centerpiece. And if that's the case, if you're taking Ace Bailey in that regard, then you need to trade Trey Murphy. Like, I think that's just it. You cannot get one to develop while the other is playing. It just won't happen. It just won't happen. Not with this team, not with the circumstances they're operating on. If you're under the assumption that Joe Dumars, who said in his comments to Rod Walker, who said in his interviews with WDSU, with WVUE, everybody he talked to, that he wants to turn things around and win. And he didn't put a timetable on it, but his goal is to win. And you are on a timetable with Zion Williamson. Then the player that you draft this year has to be someone who complements Zion immediately. That the one thing that they can do immediately is complement Zion Williamson. Every rookie's got to grow his game. Every rookie has to get better. Every rookie has something to work on and improve. But do those skills complement what you already have in place? And I don't think Ace Bailey's skill set at his height and the curve that it's going to take for him to reach his potential, I don't think that aligns with what the Pelicans are trying to do. The Pelicans are in the midst of their pre-draft workouts. They brought a few players in already. And they only have one pick. And as I talked about, I'd like to see them pick up a second pick, whether that's in the second round or late in the first round. They are inviting a bunch of players to come in and work out. According to Hoops Hype, the Pelicans have taken a look at 6 players in the backcourt, and a lot of these were confirmed by Will Guillory from The Athletic as well. I want to give him his credit. In the backcourt, point guards Janelle Davis out of Arkansas, North Carolina's R.J. Davis, and shooting guard Caleb Grill from Missouri. In the front court, you've got Stephen Crowell from Wisconsin, C.J. Huntley from App State, and Hunter Dickinson out of Kansas. So all of those except for Huntley come from Power 5 conferences. Davis played 5 seasons, finishing his career with the Arkansas Razorbacks and making 29 starts for them last year. A good Arkansas team that made the NCAA tournament. He did think about coming out early a year ago, but went on to play for the Razorbacks instead. If you're looking at his shot profile, he's an undersized 2 guard who shot about 35% from deep in his career. So I don't think, he's somebody that the Pelicans will be looking to draft. I think he's somebody that maybe, a lot of these guys I think are people that you look at as undrafted free agents, 2-way contracts, stuff like that. Camp bodies. You're looking for potential and maybe somebody breaks out. You're looking for your next Carlo Matkovic, your next Najee Marshall. That's who you're trying to find. Even a Jose Alvarado. If you could find somebody, that diamond in the rough, who's played basketball, who's got experience, who can come in and understand things pretty quickly that you're not trying to teach. All these guys are veteran basketball players. These are all guys who played most, if not all of their careers. They played either 4, 5, or in some cases 6 seasons. So seasoning is an important part of what Joe Dumars has looked for in inviting these players to New Orleans. R.J. Davis, 6-foot point guard who had his best season in 2023-24 for the Tar Heels when he averaged an ACC best 21 points per game and was named first team All-America. So he's one of those guys that, again, you look at somebody who can be a leader for you, who can score, who comes from a pedigree of a program that's about winning, has been well coached. I think that RJ Davis is one of those players. Again, undersized. You're looking at 6'4" for Davis, for Janelle Davis, and you're looking at 6 foot for RJ Davis. So you're not getting bigger at these positions. You'd be getting smaller, and you already have a 6 foot point guard in Jose Alvarado. Caleb Grill played 6 seasons of college ball at 3 different schools, with the last 2 coming at Missouri. Last season, he was the SEC 6th man of the year. He averaged 13.7 points per game and shot 40% from 3. Another 6'3", 6'4" guy, but again, a long distance shooter who I think can stretch the floor. He would be a short minutes offensive boost as a player if he does become a Pelican. Then you look at the front court, you've got Steven Crowell, who spent 5 seasons with the Wisconsin Badgers, averaged 9.7 points, 5.6 rebounds in 153 games. Just a steady big body. Most prognosticators have him going to Europe to try to develop his game. Not a great offensive repertoire, not a giant as far as his athleticism or his defensive capabilities. You look at Huntley, he's a guy who's drawn a lot of interest lately from teams who are looking for big in the second round with upside. 6'11", average 15.7 points, 8 boards per game, 7'4" wingspan. Not a great rebounder or defender on his own, but he gets his reputation as a scorer. And at 6'11", he could be another stretch big to come in and compete with Carlo Makovic. Not as great an athlete. I think Carlo is faster and a bit of a better jumper in transition. But this guy shot almost 36% from beyond the arc on 4 attempts per game. That's a lot for a center. He was knocking down shots. Finally, you get Hunter Dickinson, the 7'1" center who played for Michigan and Kansas. He was one of the best scoring bigs in the draft, averaged 17 points, 10 rebounds for the Jayhawks last season, has averaged a double-double pretty much for his last 3 seasons of college basketball. Skilled scorer, solid rebounder, and he shot 35% from 3 over his final 3 seasons on about 2 attempts per game. But all of these players are projects at best. They're going to need time, or you have to put them in really good situations where they can score and contribute pretty quickly. But none of these guys would be rotational players for anybody next year, unless you're in a bad situation like the Pelicans were when everyone got hurt. But there may be a diamond in the rough amongst that group. I think people are kind of high on Hunter Dickinson. And I think people, like I said, Huntley has drawn a lot of attention. A guy who played at App State, so certainly not as a high profile as a school as some of these others. But at 6'11", with that kind of shooting range, somebody's going to take a flyer on him. Right? Now, we talked earlier about Herb Jones possibly being connected to the Cavs trade. And there is a player that I think who will be taken early in the second round, who I would love for the Pelicans to consider if they do move on from Herb Jones. And even if they don't, if you want to put another defender on that second unit, a real defender and a versatile player, there's one guy that I am really focused on. And I have to, the full disclosure, I know this young man because I watched him up close and personal for 4 years. He is Duke, by the way of Tulane, guard Sion James. Now, I got to watch Sion for 4 years while he was with the Green Wave. And he was this, I think, a 3-star recruit coming out of Georgia. Super athlete. If you ever see Sion James, he's about 6'5", all muscle. A lot of people have compared him physically to like a Lou Dort, where he looks like a linebacker on the court. Incredible quickness. I mean, like just the quickness, the power, the quick jump ability, the strength. I watched him guard 1 through 5 in the Tulane matchup zone defense, where he had to be the stopper up on the perimeter. He was the best on-ball defender that Tulane had. And then in the back of that zone, he would play the center position at times. Now, at 6'5", he can't play. I don't see him doing that, obviously, in the NBA, but he's far more physically gifted than a Herb Jones. And he has a high IQ, 6'5", 185, great athlete. In his freshman year, this is a young man who developed over his career in the 5 seasons. Started off shooting 28% from beyond the arc as a freshman. Terrible. He was a reluctant shooter. He didn't want the ball. Couldn't make free throws either as a freshman. Last season at Duke, 41% from 3. The last 2 years combined, about 40% overall from 3. moved his free throw percentage up to the 80s last year. So showed, again, growth as a shooter. He's a solid rebounder at the guard position, takes great care of the basketball for his career, almost a 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. He's, as I talked about, a great on-ball defender, very physical, played part of that Duke defense that was maybe the best in the country, one of the best I've seen in quite some time. That Duke defense was smothering. And he was a big part of that, coming over in that transfer and really taking that role on of leadership and being the top perimeter defender for that team. A plus 63.2 net his last 3 seasons. That's how impactful he was. Not a creative scorer, not somebody who's going to kill people off the dribble, but he protects the basketball. He can drive. He can finish above the rim. He can finish, through contact. And again, I think he's a high IQ player who would be great off the Pelicans bench. I think Sion James, if the Pelicans can find a way in the second round to take Sion James, especially if they're moving Herb Jones, if that happens this offseason, if they find a deal that they've got to take, whether it's the Darius Garland deal, whether it's Jared Allen, whether it's whomever, if Herb Jones leaves because he's one of the few assets that you can get a first rounder for, that maybe you can get multiple depending on the team. If Herb Jones is out the door, you need somebody to replace him because there's not another great on-ball defender on this team. Sion James could be that for you. He's not as rangy as Herb Jones is, but a more physical and more explosive player who can knock down the outside shot and should get better as a shooter. The big thing about Herb when he came in was that he was not considered a shooter and became a solid shooter, especially from three-point range. If Sion James can have that same kind of ascent, I think he could be a very good player in the NBA for a long time. And he's I'll say this again, he's as physically gifted as any player his size. Like just all the stuff. Speed, quickness, quick jump, powerful, all those things. Go look up some Sion James highlights, and I'm telling you, you will enjoy them. All right, that's going to do it for today. I'll be back again tomorrow, of course. We are on every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday throughout the offseason. So the guys will be going live on Monday night, I believe at 8 o'clock tonight, if I'm not mistaken, since they were usually go on Sundays, but tonight they're going to do it instead because game 2 of the finals. So make sure y'all check that out tonight, the live broadcast of the roundtable with the guys on Pro Pels Talk. So check that out. And then, of course, like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell so you don't miss an episode of the Post Up. And follow me on social media at DM Grubb. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on TikTok. And I'm on Blue Sky. So until the next time, y'all have a great afternoon and enjoy the hoops of the NBA Finals until we meet again. All right.